Hello, this is Ukraine War Awareness back with episode 3 called Human Shields. Now, we'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to wrap up what we started in episode 2, which is about the child soldiers, and because of the 15-minute limit, I didn't get to finish it. Here goes basically the thing that I wanted to say.
About their own country.
Now, you see this little child, he's wearing a Soviet belt. And these belts, they're from World War II era or even earlier. So this is definitely his grandfather's belt, one of his ancestors' belts.
Увидел рисуночек детский. Он нарисовал то, что сейчас происходит. Это война на Востоке. И два танка двигались навстречу друг другу. И на одном из танков, я так понимаю, что он его изобразил как свой. На этом танке было два символа. Это красная звезда и желто-синий флажок. И как бы у ребенка, я так понимаю, просто хаос в голове. То есть, может быть, где-то в садике или в школе говорят одно, а родители говорят другое. Мы хотели навести порядок. То есть разложить по полочкам в голове у детей, что у них есть своя история, своя страна, свои символы.
Well, that's a little bit contradicting, considering that if that belt was given to him by his grandfathers, their grandfathers participated in World War II, most likely in the Red Army, part of the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd Ukrainian Army of the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd Belarusian Front. Of course, there's going to be chaos in the child's head because he's too young for this kind of politics. So he has to choose his family heritage or something, his family history, or the new independent Ukraine, the new views after the Color Revolution, after the Euromaidan. So of course this will cause chaos to a child, he won't know who to defend. The Mariupol of, the new Azov nationalism or the Mariupol of the old Soviet Red Army defenders, So of course this will confuse the shit out of a child. Anyways, as I also mentioned, kids that have a lot of similar stories in the separatist territories, that they either live in a basement or have to fight. Basically, I just want to show you a little footage. This was from December 2015, where humanitarian aid was delivered to a Donetsk area, separatist controlled, and children still live in basements, Has his little patriotic hat there. But that's not the point. That's not the point I'm showing. The point I'm showing is towards the Poroshenko's speech. If you didn't get a chance to see it, view it on episode 2. Episode 2 link is in the description. And children and seniors still in 2016 live in bomb shelters, live in basements. That's where this kid lives. And I'm sure if he would have an older brother, seeing all of his family members just sitting in the basements, I'm sure that he would side with the separatists. And, that's nothing to blame them for. Because there's a little mix-up. There's a little mix-up of whose land it is claimed. The people of Donetsk, who lived there for centuries, claim it's their land, and Ukraine, which exists since 1918 independently, but then since 1922 was integrated into the USSR, and the whole region of Nova Russia was given to Ukraine in 1922 by Lenin, the entire Nova Russia region. It was basically a victory type of thing. Here, you communist Ukrainians have earned this. Here's the entire Nova Russia region. It was a gift from Lenin in 1922, and that includes the region of Lugansk, which is here, the region of Donetsk, Kharkiv, Odessa, Poltava, and all of those regions. And Kiev was the only 1918 independent region of Ukraine in 1918. Now, I just want to say this while I have the chance. There's a lot of mix-ups about people thinking that I'm biased, that I'm pro-Russian, that I'm pro-Ukrainian, that I'm pro-this, pro-that. I'm not pro-anything. The only thing that I'm pro is I'm pro-people. I'm pro the people, I am for the people. I am from eastern Ukraine myself. I am from the Kharkiv region. I have been in Donetsk during the 2012 Euro Cup, beautiful city, and, I share the Eastern Ukrainians' mentalities. That's why I know what they might be thinking. However, it does not in any way make me pro-Russian, but I do want the people's voice be heard, and I do not want history to be twisted as it is being right now. So in episode 4, I will conclude debunking Russiakills and InformNapalm, and in episode 5 or episode 6, we'll start debunking media claims. Media claims such as by Ihor Kolomoisky, which is an oligarch that owns most of the media in Ukraine, and other changes, as well as Western media, as well as Russian media. So let's move on. Before we get to the human shields part, I want to start at the very beginning. February 22nd through 27th, this is from Russiakills, back at Russiakills.com. On February 22nd, 2014, armored vehicles with Russian troops with all markings and insignias removed have left their territory of the military base, rented by a Russian Federation. The English here sucks. It's like they used Google Translate to translate all of this, by the Russian Federation, actually. And advanced in several directions throughout the Crimean Republic, blocking and taking over the strategic objects, thus crudely violating international laws and agreements. The confrontations took place between aggressive pro-Russian supporters and Crimean Tatars who opposed the separation from Ukraine. During the clashes of February 26th, 2 peaceful protesters had died, more than 20 people were beaten by Cossacks and Russian fascists. Now, there was, of course, in small numbers pro-Ukrainian support, but the majority numbers in support were pro-Russians. But the reason those protests took place is because it was called anti-Maidan. And first of all, it started on February 23rd, not 22nd. It was protesters that wanted to create a self-defense force. This was before the people knew that the Russian soldiers were going to come to Crimea, which came on February 27th, but what they did know is that Right Sector was going to send them trains of friendship. This was from the leader of Right Sector. He said he was going to send trains of friendship to, quote, teach Crimeans how to be Ukrainian. There weren't any Tatarians, well, maybe in small minorities, but not even to get into the media. The majority were just Ukrainians and pro-Russians, pro-Ukrainians, pro-Russians, and Right Sector said they're going to teach pro-Russian Crimeans how to be Ukrainians. Like a Ukrainian nationalist, I will say, this is how it's going to be.
Розірвати територіальну цілісність України будуть жорстко покарані.
Those who want to rip apart Ukrainians' territorial sovereignty will be brutally teared apart.
Якщо влада на це не здатна, правий сектор сформує поїзд дружби.
Right Sector will form up their trains of friendship, and through the rest of the video he talks about how he will brutally teach them how to be Ukrainian. And of course that's what spawned, this was on February 24th, February 23rd is when they wanted to create the self-defense force because it was happening throughout all of eastern Ukraine and they knew that Crimea was going to be next. Now, given the geographical location of Crimea, logically it would have been last to have any crisis there because it would take a while for central Western Ukrainians to get to Crimea. Now, even though this is from a Russian documentary called Crimea's Way to Home, it does depict self-defense commanders, as to say, or the people's commanders, that started a defense force to meet the people on the train, the Right Sector, to fight them, to defend Crimea. So they're preparing their riot shields because they didn't have access to any weaponry. Now this event, that's a Crimean flag by the way, this event, it happened on February 27th. And that's actually exactly when the Russian troops came. When the train arrived, the train ended up being empty because apparently Right Sector has gotten word that Russian troops have come, so they got out at an earlier stop before entering Crimea. Also, it says 2 peaceful protesters had died. It doesn't say which protesters, but given how they were beaten by Cossacks and Russian fascists, one can assume that it was Ukrainian protesters that died. I don't usually use Wikipedia as a source, but you could see that a total of 3 protesters died, and 2 of the protesters were pro-Russian protesters, and 1 of the protesters was pro-Ukrainian. And this is according to 4 sources. So 4 sources says there, you know, that tells you a lot. And it also says all deaths were not related directly to military activities. So Russiakills says they were beaten by Russian fascists, but if Crimeans are technically Ukrainians, so they must refer, on February 22nd came Russian soldiers and beat up 2 peaceful protesters, which the protesters, you know, this does not look peaceful to me, but, you know, they want to depict it as, you know, monstrous as possible, but they were not military related, and, you know, they just died through clashes the same way, except through shooting guns, the same way that protesters died on Euromaidan. Now, about the human shields, they claim it was on April 2014 when the ATO started. The ATO started on April 15th, 2014. The capture of the city by the Russian military, the use of, quote, human shields, and the attack on civilian towns. This you guys can all read yourselves, but they claim that the security forces launched anti-terrorist operation for the liberation of Slavyansk. Militants have used local residents as, quote, human shield. Now, this is so twisted and fucked up, the fact that they would even put something like this, it's fucked up. This did not happen. Human shields did not happen. This is what really happened. Yes, there were a couple of battles for Slavyansk. Slavyansk is in Donetsk. Currently it's government-controlled territory, but even, like, I would never recommend Vice News, but even Vice News did a good story about this on April 20th. Vice News, it's called Dispatch 28 of their Russian roulette. Ukrainian military give up their weapons. It was people basically forming their own human, like a human chain. It was a human chain, not human shields. It was used to stop Ukrainian columns of military hardware. The people, the residents of Slavyansk, did not want the Ukrainian military entering their city. And the ones that opened fire were actually the, quote, anti-terrorist operators, you know, the Ukrainian military. This incident is from May 2nd. All right, we'll return to this incident. This incident is from April 9th. Same thing. You see Ukrainian military columns moving into Slavyansk, and people are forming around them, surrounding them, trying to stop them with their bare hands. There's a lot of footages about this. It was going on since April, throughout all of April and into early May. And in early May, that's when Slavyansk was taken. But before it was taken, a lot of commanders and UAF soldiers, they actually defected from the Ukrainian side to the separatist side. And not only did the separatists gain all the equipment, some equipment they sent back to the Ukrainian military, but not only did they gain some of the equipment, there was also a military base in Slavyansk, which the people, the residents, took up arms themselves to defend Slavyansk. So this wasn't basically DPR versus UAF, this was Slavyansk versus ATO in a way. Slavyansk versus the National Guard. And there were no use of human shields. There was a human chain which the Ukrainian army opened fire upon. These were all made by the residents. This here they claim were 2 civilians and 3 separatists that died. This is the people trying to stop the columns from advancing, and there's going to be more footages of this. They say that the Ukrainian military drove over the legs of one of the activists, so they put him in a car to drive him to the hospital. Scum, you fascists! They say that right sector is involved and that the National Guard is involved. Now, from a different angle here, you'll also see that the Ukrainian BTR opened fire. You see it there, it opened fire. The news reporter says that the people are no longer scared of provocative fire. Here's another footage of it. All of this will be in the description so that you could see for yourselves, and this happened about 3 times in Slavyansk. According to Vice News, which I found out, by the way, is actually sponsored by HBO, So, you know, where they get their money from, since they have to... Oh, there's going to be another provocative fire here. You heard that? So, who fires at who? Once again, I apologize about my 15-minute limit, but I have so much more content, so much more articles, so much more videos about the Human Shields incidents. I will definitely continue this soon in episode 4.